He put the handcuffs on in front of 4 witnesses, a gas station on the corner of Route 9 and Housestead, 2:14 in the morning, the kind of bright-lit island in the dark that makes everything that happens under its lights visible and permanent. Officer Dale Pruitt of the Caldwell County Sheriff's Department had pulled over a black Jeep Cherokee for a rolling stop at a light 3 blocks back, and now the driver, a black woman in her mid-30s, still in work clothes, a lanyard badge visible at her collar, was standing at the rear of her vehicle with her wrists bound behind her, while Pruitt ran her license. She had not raised her voice. She had not resisted. She had asked twice what the basis for her detention was, and both times Pruitt had told her to keep quiet and step back. The attendant inside the gas station had stopped pretending to count inventory and was watching through the plate glass window with his phone in his hand. Pruitt did not know, had not asked, had not looked, what was in the black bag on the back seat or in the envelope inside the woman's glove box, or what the lanyard badge at her collar actually said. He would know all 3 things in 11 minutes, and when he did, his hands would go very still on the roof of his cruiser, and he would not speak for a long time. Rewind 14 hours. Special Agent Dana Reeves had been awake since noon the previous day, which meant she had been awake for what her phone confirmed was 26 consecutive hours when she got into her Jeep at 1:47 a.m. and started the drive back from the field office. The operation had closed at midnight, not concluded, not resolved, but closed in the way that operations close when the immediate threat is contained, and the documentation and the aftermath and the careful reconstruction of the event chain would take weeks more. She had signed 3 reports and 2 evidence logs and sat in a debrief room with 4 other agents and the ASAC until 1:30 a.m. And then she had driven out of the field office parking lot toward the apartment 40 minutes away that she had not slept in for 3 nights. She had been a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation for 11 years. Before that, 4 years at Quantico for training, and before that, 3 years as a police detective in the same Caldwell County where she had grown up, a fact she did not mention often and did not consider ironic, though it was. She had left Caldwell County at 24 on a scholarship to a state university, come back at 27 to the detective's position, left again at 30 for Quantico, and had now spent 11 years as a federal agent working counterterrorism and organized crime based out of the regional field office 60 miles north. She carried herself the way people carry themselves when they have spent 11 years in a job that requires the management of extremely high-stakes situations in extremely compressed timelines, with the particular flat calm of someone whose baseline has been recalibrated through sustained exposure to genuine danger. She was not easily startled. She did not waste energy on things that did not require energy. She was, by the assessment of the 3 ASACs she had worked under, the agent least likely to make a decision she would need to explain later. She was also, at 2:14 in the morning at a gas station on Route 9 in Housestead, 26 hours into a continuous shift, handcuffed behind her own vehicle, in front of 4 witnesses because she had rolled a stop sign. She had seen the lights in her rearview mirror on the dark stretch of Route 9 between the highway on-ramp and the gas station, and she had pulled over immediately, correctly, into the gas station's lot because it was lit and public, and she understood, with the specific professional knowledge of 11 years in federal law enforcement, why a black woman should always conduct a traffic stop in a lit and public place. She turned on her interior light. She placed both hands on the steering wheel. She waited. Officer Dale Pruitt was 29 years old and had been with the Caldwell County Sheriff's Department for 3 years. He had a clearance rate that his supervising sergeant described as adequate, and a complaint file that was thinner than it should have been. Not because no complaints had been made, but because the department's complaint intake process had, over the years, quietly thinned itself. He was not, in the formal sense, a bad officer. He was an officer who had never been meaningfully corrected, and in law enforcement, as in most institutional environments, the 2 conditions tend to produce the same outcomes. He approached the Jeep with his flashlight at window level. Dana had her window down and both hands visible on the wheel before he reached the door. She identified herself immediately, her name and the fact that she was a federal agent and the location of her service weapon in the center console. Pruitt's flashlight moved across the interior. It stopped on the black tactical bag on the back seat. It stopped on the lanyard at her collar. Then he asked for license and registration, and when she said she would need to reach into the glove box, he told her to wait and step out of the vehicle. She stepped out, She asked calmly what the basis for her detention was. He said rolling stop. She said that if she was being detained, she would like to understand whether she was being asked to exit the vehicle as a precautionary measure or whether there was an additional basis for the traffic stop. He told her to step to the rear of the vehicle. She stepped to the rear of the vehicle. He put the handcuffs on. There are things that happen in the body when handcuffs are placed on your wrists that are not about the physical sensation. Dana Reeves knew this intellectually. She had put handcuffs on other people's wrists more times than she had counted, and she had been trained at Quantico to understand the specific psychology of restraint and what it communicated to the restrained person beyond its technical function. She knew what the click of the ratchet meant in the body. She knew what it meant to have your hands immobilized behind you in a public place in front of witnesses. She stood at the rear of her Jeep and breathed. She did not resist. She did not raise her voice. She said one more time, clearly and evenly, "Officer, I am a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. My credentials and service weapon are in the vehicle. I would like to walk you through the retrieval of both." The gas station attendant, a man named Marcus, 22 years old, working the overnight shift for $11 an hour, was on his phone. He had been on it since the handcuffs went on. He was not calling anyone. He was recording. The other three witnesses, a woman who had been filling her tank at Pump 2 and had stopped mid-transaction and was standing very still with a pump handle in her hand, a man in a pickup truck parked at the air and water station, who had rolled his window down, a teenager on a bicycle who had stopped at the edge of the lot and had not moved. Nobody said anything. The lights of the gas station hummed their flat electric hum. Pruitt's cruiser radio crackled twice. He went back to the window of the Jeep and ran Dana's license through the system. Here is what the system showed. Her name, Dana Marie Reeves. No warrants, no record. A driver's license in good standing and flagged automatically in the law enforcement database because it was required to be flagged. Federal law enforcement officer. Active. FBI. With a notation that the system generated on all active federal agents. A notation that any law enforcement officer running a query was trained to recognize and was required by protocol to respond to in a specific way. Pruitt read the screen. He read it again. He did not move for approximately 8 seconds. His hand, resting on the roof of his cruiser, went very still. He walked back to where Dana was standing. He did not move quickly. He moved the way people move when they are managing the recalibration of a situation that has gone somewhere they did not intend and are now calculating simultaneously what the correct next action is and what the implications of the previous actions are. He said, "Ma'am, I need to ask Agent Reeves," she said. Her voice was level, not cold, not hostile, level. The way it had been level since the traffic stop began, because she had been in enough high-stakes rooms to know that the moment you let the other person's behavior set your register, you have given away something you do not get back. "Agent Reeves," he said, "I'm going to remove the restraints." "Yes," she said, "you are." She rubbed one wrist briefly, not because it was damaged, but because it is what hands do when they have been bound. She looked at Dale Pruitt for a moment with the expression of someone who is conducting an assessment and has not yet decided what to do with the results. "I'm going to retrieve my credentials from the glove box," she said, "and then I'm going to need your badge number." He gave it to her. She retrieved the credentials from the glove box, the black leather credential wallet, FBI embossed on the cover, her photograph and identification inside, and she held it so he could see it clearly, which was mostly a formality at this point, but which she completed anyway because she was precise about procedures even when they were uncomfortable. Especially when they were uncomfortable, she put the credentials back in the glove box. She stood beside her Jeep on Route 9 at 2:26 in the morning and looked at the gas station and the 4 witnesses and the young man through the plate glass who had lowered his phone now, but whose thumb, she nodded, had not moved from the screen. She made 2 decisions. The first decision was to drive home, sleep, and file the report in the morning when she had 8 hours of sleep behind her, and the 26-hour shift was not the frame through which she was processing everything. This was a tactical decision and a professional one. She had learned across 11 years of work in high-stakes environments that the reports that held up and the reports that moved things were the ones written with a clear head, in sequential order, with precise language and no editorializing. She would write that report. The second decision was about the recording. She had seen Marcus lower his phone. She had noted his thumb still on the screen. She had assessed, in the particular rapid way she assessed things, whether the recording was something she needed to address in this moment. She decided it was not. The recording, if it existed and if it was complete, was evidence. Evidence was useful. She did not manage evidence. She let it exist. She got back into the Jeep. She looked in the rearview mirror at Dale Pruitt standing beside his cruiser in the gas station lot, and she looked at her own face in the mirror, the crease of exhaustion across her forehead. The work clothes she had been in for 26 hours, the lanyard badge at her collar, and she thought for a moment about all the times she had been in that lot, that road, that county. As a young woman who grew up here and came back here and left again and came back in a different capacity and would carry this county in her bones regardless of what she did or where she went, she thought about what it meant to be running her license through a federal database and to have the flag generate and to still be standing in the gas station lot with the memory of the ratchet click in her wrists. She drove home. She slept for 7 hours. She wrote the report at 10 a.m. It was 6 pages, single-spaced in the sequential and precise language she had promised herself, with the timestamps and the badge number, and a description of the 4 witnesses, and a note about the recording she had observed being made. She filed it with the Office of Professional Responsibility at the Caldwell County Sheriff's Department, and simultaneously with the FBI's Civil Rights Division and with her own ASAC, who she had already briefed by phone at 9:45 a.m. Her ASAC had said, after a pause, "Are you all right? The report is accurate and complete." He had said, "I know it is." Another pause. "Dana, I'm asking personally." She had thought about this for a moment. "Yes," she said, "I'll let you know if that changes." The Caldwell County Sheriff's Department received the report at 10:48 a.m. The department's legal counsel read it at 11:15. At 11:30, the sheriff, a man named Robert Gates, who had been in the role for 7 years and who ran a department that was not corrupt in the organized sense, but was deeply comfortable with its own patterns, was briefed by his counsel and by the undersheriff, and the 3 of them sat in the sheriff's office for 40 minutes discussing options. The options were not in reality multiple. The report was precise. The badge number was correct. The federal flag had generated in the system, which meant there was a system record of the query at the exact time and date. There were 4 witnesses at the gas station, and there was a recording, Marcus's phone, 23 minutes of clear footage from the moment the Jeep pulled in to the moment it pulled out, that had been shared by 9 a.m. to a community accountability group and a local journalist who had covered 3 previous incidents at the department and who had, by the time the sheriff's office briefing began, already emailed the department's public information officer for comment. The recording was clear. The audio was clear. "I am a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation," was audible 6 separate times across the footage. The response, "I said keep quiet," was audible twice. The handcuffs were visible. The 8 seconds of Pruitt standing still at his cruiser after reading his laptop screen were visible. The department's legal counsel said, at the end of the 40-minute meeting, that the department had a narrow window in which to respond in a way that was voluntary rather than compelled. Sheriff Gates used the window. Officer Dale Pruitt was placed on administrative leave that afternoon, pending a formal internal affairs review. The review was not this time the kind of review that quietly thins itself. Dana Reeves's report had been simultaneously filed with the FBI's Civil Rights Division, and the division had acknowledged receipt, which meant the review was happening in a frame that had external eyes on it. The sheriff called Dana's ASAC at 2 p.m. and made a statement that the ASAC transcribed and shared with Dana that the department took the incident seriously, that the internal review would be conducted transparently, that the department would cooperate fully with any federal review. Dana read the transcript at 2:15 p.m. She was at her desk in the field office, on her 3rd cup of coffee, working through the documentation from the operation that had closed the night before. She read it once. She noted it. She went back to work. The internal affairs review took 9 weeks. It found that Pruitt had failed to follow protocol upon being informed of a federal agent's presence, had failed to follow protocol upon the system generating a federal flag, had failed to follow protocol in the application of restraints without articulable cause beyond a rolling stop at a low-traffic intersection at 2 a.m. and had violated the department's own guidelines for traffic stop conduct at two distinct points in the recorded interaction. The review also found 3 prior complaints against Pruitt, 1 formal, 2 informal, that had been received, logged, and not acted upon in the standard way that creates the conditions for the 4th incident. And the 5th, Pruitt's employment was terminated at the conclusion of the review. The department, under directive from Sheriff Gates and the counsel of the department's legal team, enacted 3 procedural changes: a mandatory refresher on federal law enforcement interaction protocols for all active officers, a restructured complaint intake process with independent review, and a body camera compliance policy with teeth. Consequences rather than reminders. None of this was announced publicly with fanfare. The local journalist wrote a piece. It was thorough. It covered the recording, the termination, the procedural changes, and the prior complaints. Dana Reeves was described in it as a federal agent who had filed a report and cooperated with the review. She did not give a comment. She did not give a comment because she had been asked for one and had said simply, "The report is public record. It says everything that needs to be said." Marcus, the gas station attendant, was quoted. He said he had been working nights for 2 years and had seen things at that corner that he had never known what to do about. He said that this time he had known. He said he was glad the footage was useful. 6 months after the traffic stop, Dana Reeves was in the field office conference room for a training session, not as a participant, as the instructor. She ran 2 sessions a year for junior agents on interaction protocols in complex field environments drawn from 11 years of operational experience and the specific, recurring pattern of situations that looked simple and were not. The room held 14 agents, all of them newer to the job than she was, all of them in the particular state of early career alertness that she remembered from her own first years. She was walking them through a decision tree for high-stakes encounters when a junior agent in the 3rd row, a young man named Kofi, 10 months out of Quantico, who she had noticed asked the sharpest questions, raised his hand and said, "What do you do when you're not the agent? When you're the civilian and the encounter goes wrong?" The room was quiet. It was a good question. It was the question that required the most precise answer. She looked at him for a moment. "You document," she said. "You document in real time or as close to it as possible. You use precise language and sequence. You preserve evidence, yours and anyone else's. You file through the correct channels simultaneously so that no single channel can manage the response alone." She paused. "And you stay level. Not because staying level means you're not angry or not affected, because staying level keeps you in the frame where the documentation is accurate and the process works. The process only works if the documentation holds up." Kofi wrote in his notebook, "Is that what you do?" he said. He was not asking about doctrine. He was asking about her. She held his eyes. "Yes," she said, "that is what I do." She did not say more. She did not need to. 11 years of that answer lived in the 6 pages she had filed at 10:48 a.m. on a morning after a night that had not been what it should have been, in a county she had grown up in and left and come back to and carried in her bones, on a gas station corner in the bright-lit dark, where 4 people had watched and one of them had known to hold the phone steady. The process had worked because the documentation held. She moved on to the next slide.